Imagine a world where you've been taught that your own light is a curse. From the moment you opened your eyes, invisible hands pressed shadows into your soul, whispering that to dim yourself is noble, that to shrink is divine. They told you strength is a sin cloaked in pride, that ambition is a beast to be tamed. And you believed them, not because you're foolish, but because the lie was so gentle it felt like love. Look at your hands. How many times have they trembled not from weakness but from the weight of a mask you didn't choose? You've worn it so long that its edges have fused with your skin, a second face hiding the fire beneath. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." What if your life isn't a string of accidents but a script written by voices you never questioned? You've been conditioned to apologize for your own existence, to bow before a morality that celebrates surrender. Every time you silenced your hunger for more, you fed a machine designed to keep you small. Think of the moments you swallowed your truth, when you smiled through clenched teeth, when you stepped back to let mediocrity take the stage. Each time, a piece of you withered, not from defeat, but from the lie you told yourself that it didn't matter. Nietzsche saw this too. He called it the slave morality, a cage built by those too afraid to stand tall. It's not your fault you were born into it, but it's your burden to see it for what it is. The world doesn't hate the strong because they're cruel. It hates them because they expose the cowardice of the comfortable. When someone dares to rise, they become a mirror, reflecting a truth too sharp to bear. You've felt this, haven't you? The sting of resentment when you dared to dream beyond the lines. They didn't criticize you to save you. They did it to save themselves from the question your courage forced them to face. There's a story from ancient Greece about Icarus who flew too close to the sun and fell. We're taught it's a warning against hubris, but what if it's a lie to keep us grounded, afraid of our own wings? Strength isn't the absence of fear. It's the refusal to let it rule you. It's not about breaking others, it's about breaking the chains you didn't even know were there. You've been taught to see compassion as a soft virtue, but what if it's a leash disguised as kindness? True compassion doesn't cradle weakness, it demands you rise even when it hurts. Picture a man in a cave, shackled, watching shadows dance on the wall. Plato's allegory isn't just a tale, it's your life. You've mistaken those shadows for reality, but the light outside is waiting, blinding and brutal. The psychologist Viktor Frankl survived the horrors of Auschwitz and wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." If he could find strength in hell, what's your excuse? You're not weak because you lack power. You're weak because you've buried it under layers of guilt and doubt. Dig deep enough, and you'll find it still burns, waiting for you to claim it. Every day you let pass without questioning, the script is a day you hand your life to someone else. Time doesn't care about your hesitation. It carves your tombstone while you debate whether you're worthy. Society loves the resigned. They're predictable, easy to control. A chorus of echoes drowning out the lone voice that dares to sing. But that voice, raw and unpolished, is where freedom begins. Have you ever noticed how the herd turns on the one who steps out of line? It's not anger driving them. It's fear, the terror of realizing their limits are self-imposed. Nietzsche spoke of the will to power, not as domination, but as the pulse of life itself, the drive to become more than you are. It's not a gift bestowed. It's a fire you stoke with every choice to stand instead of kneel. You've seen it in others. Those rare souls who move through the world unshackled, their eyes alight with something you can't name. They're not different by birth. They're different by decision. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard called it the leap of faith. Not into God, but into yourself. A plunge into the unknown where no one can catch you but you. It's terrifying because it's real. And it's real because it's yours. There's a violence in transformation, not against others but against the parts of you that cling to safety. To become who you could be, you must kill who you've been, and that death is never quiet. Look around. Who lifts you toward the sun, and who anchors you in the mud? Your circle isn't just company. It's a crucible, shaping you into greatness or grinding you into dust. In 1942, a young woman named Sophie Scholl defied the Nazi regime. distributing leaflets that called for resistance. She was executed at 21. Her strength wasn't in surviving, but in refusing to bend, a reminder that courage isn't measured by years, but by will. You've been sold a fairy tale that change is gentle, a soft unfolding of petals. Reality is messier, its bones breaking to heal stronger, it's tearing through the skin of who you were to breathe as who you are. The fear of being alone stops most. They'd rather drown in a crowd than swim in solitude. But solitude isn't emptiness. It's the space where you forge a self-worth knowing. Every time you've dimmed your light to fit in, you've betrayed the child who once dreamed without limits. That child isn't gone, just buried under years of shoulds and can'ts. Nature doesn't reward stagnation. Trees grow or rot, rivers flow or fester. You're no different. To stand still is to decay, to move is to live. They'll tell you you've changed as if it's an insult, but stasis is the true crime. To evolve is to honor the life pumping through your veins, a rebellion against the slow death of sameness. You're at a crossroads now, the kind that doesn't announce itself with fanfare but with a quiet, gnawing ache. One path leads back to the familiar fog, the other into a storm, where you might finally see yourself. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, "Perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us act, just once, with beauty and courage." What if your dragons are begging you to fight, not flee? You can't unhear this. It's a splinter in your mind, a crack in the wall you've built around your potential. Ignore it and it'll haunt you. Face it and it might save you. There's no savior coming, no hand to pull you from the wreckage of your own making. You are the architect and the ruin, the prisoner and the key. Everything hinges on what you do next. So here you stand, teetering on the edge of a truth too heavy to carry and too vital to drop. What will you choose when the mirror reflects not just who you are, but who you've refused to become?